We learn to split the atom, and in doing so, split history itself. There are moments that divide time, before and after. The invention of fire, the birth of language, the discovery of agriculture, but nothing compares to July 16, 1945, when humanity unlocked the fundamental force of the universe. An invisible power locked in the heart of every grain of sand, every drop of water, became the most devastating weapon ever conceived. One scientific breakthrough promised unlimited clean energy, the end of scarcity, a golden age of human progress. Instead, it gave us the power to erase our own world. The atomic age began not with a whisper, but with a fire no human eye had ever witnessed, a light brighter than the sun, born in the New Mexico desert. In that blinding flash, our species crossed a threshold from which there was no return. We became the first, and perhaps the last, creatures capable of deliberately engineering our own extinction. This is the story of how we learned to harness the power of stars, and why that knowledge both saved and damned us. It's the story of brilliant minds driven by curiosity, governments driven by fear, and a world that has lived for 8 decades, balanced on the edge of annihilation. We stand today with over 12,000 nuclear weapons scattered across 9 nations. Enough destructive power to end human civilization hundreds of times over. The question that haunts our species remains unchanged. What will we do with the terrible power we've unleashed? The story begins not with bombs, but with wonder. At the dawn of the 20th century, science was unveiling mysteries that challenged everything we thought we knew about reality. Marie Curie, working with pitchblende in a freezing shed, discovered that certain elements spontaneously emit energy, radioactivity. Ernest Rutherford proved that atoms weren't solid spheres, but vast empty spaces with dense nuclei at their centers. Niels Bohr revealed that electrons existed in impossible quantum states, defying common sense itself. These weren't weapons researchers, they were explorers of the invisible, driven by pure curiosity about the fundamental nature of existence. In their equations and experiments lay beauty, the elegant mathematics that described how matter and energy danced at the smallest scales imaginable. But beauty, as we would learn, can be terrible. By the 1930s, scientists in Germany were conducting experiments that would change everything. Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann split uranium atoms, releasing enormous amounts of energy. When news reached physicists across Europe, the implications were immediately clear and terrifying. Einstein, the gentle pacifist whose theories made atomic weapons possible, realized what Hitler's regime might do with such knowledge. On August 2, 1939, he wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt that would alter the course of human history. It may become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large mass of uranium, by which vast amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements would be generated. This new phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs. The race was on. Not between nations seeking glory, but between democracy and fascism, between those who would use atomic power to liberate humanity and those who would use it to enslave it. Science, once the realm of chalk dust and quiet contemplation, became the language of generals and politicians. The atom, that invisible building block of reality, was about to become the most visible force on Earth. What began as humanity's quest to understand the universe was about to become our quest to survive what we had discovered. In the high desert of New Mexico, surrounded by ancient mesas and endless sky, humanity built its first weapon of mass extinction. The Manhattan Project was unlike anything ever attempted. A secret city materialized from nothing. Los Alamos, where the world's brightest minds gathered under military guard. Scientists who had spent their lives in university libraries now worked alongside army engineers in hastily constructed laboratories. The theoretical became brutally practical. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the brilliant physicist and Sanskrit scholar, led this unlikely army of intellectuals. Under his direction, two paths emerged toward the ultimate weapon. One used uranium-235, painstakingly separated at massive facilities in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The other used plutonium-239, manufactured in reactors along the Columbia River in Washington state. The scale was staggering. Over 130,000 workers across dozens of secret sites, consuming more electricity than many entire states, spending what would be $23 billion in today's money. Most workers had no idea what they were building. They knew only that it was vital to ending the war. But the scientists knew. As they solved each theoretical problem, as they calculated critical masses and implosion triggers, they were designing humanity's potential obituary. On July 16, 1945, at 5:29 in the morning, that design became reality. The Trinity test turned night into day across 3 states. Observers 20 miles away felt heat on their faces. The steel tower holding the device simply vaporized. Sand fused into green glass, trinitite, that remains radioactive today. The mushroom cloud rose 40,000 feet into the stratosphere. Oppenheimer, watching through dark glasses, remembered words from the Bhagavad Gita. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Enrico Fermi, the brilliant Italian physicist, made calculations as the shockwave reached him. That corresponds to about 10,000 tons of TNT, he announced matter-of-factly, as if he were measuring rainfall. But General Leslie Groves, military director of the project, saw something else entirely. "The war is over," he said. "1 or 2 of those things and Japan will surrender." In that blinding flash, physics became politics, theory became strategy, and humanity entered an age from which there would be no return. An age where human beings possessed the power of gods, but remained burdened with the wisdom of mortals. 3 weeks after Trinity, the world learned what atomic fire could do to human beings. August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima time. The Enola Gay, a B-29 superfortress, released a single bomb called Little Boy above a city of 350,000 people. For 43 seconds, it fell through clear morning air. Then, 1,900 feet above the city center, uranium reached critical mass. In 1/10,000th of a second, the temperature at ground zero reached 6,000 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. Human beings within 500 meters were instantly vaporized, leaving only shadows burned onto walls and pavements. These shadows remain visible today, ghostly silhouettes of people who simply ceased to exist. The blast wave traveled outward at 984 miles per hour, demolishing buildings for miles. Then came the firestorm, hurricane-force winds, feeding flames that consumed everything organic. Within hours, 4 square miles of Hiroshima had been reduced to ash and rubble. By the end of 1945, 140,000 people were dead, but the horror was only beginning. Radiation sickness struck survivors weeks later, hair falling out, blood failing to clot, organs shutting down. These were diseases without names, suffering without precedent. The Hibakusha, explosion survivors, faced not only trauma and injury, but social ostracism, as people feared radiation was contagious. 3 days later, August 9th, it happened again. Fat Man fell on Nagasaki, a city that had been spared Allied bombing raids and was home to Japan's largest Christian population. The plutonium bomb was even more powerful, but hills and valleys limited its destruction. Still, another 70,000 died immediately, with tens of thousands more following in the months ahead. Michiko Kodama was 7 years old in Hiroshima when the bomb fell. Decades later, she would remember. I saw people with their skin hanging off like rags, people with their eyes hanging out, hair burned off their heads. They didn't look human anymore. Dr. Marcel Junod of the International Red Cross, among the first outsiders to enter Hiroshima, wrote, "The most striking thing about the city was its silence. Not a sound could be heard. People moved like ghosts among the ruins. For the world, these weren't just military targets destroyed, they were glimpses of a possible future. Cities reduced to atomic shadows, civilization itself vulnerable to weapons that could fit in a single aircraft. The dawn of the atomic age was also the twilight of the assumption that human beings would always exist. We had created weapons that could end our own story." The atomic monopoly lasted exactly 4 years. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated First Lightning, a plutonium bomb nearly identical to Fat Man. American seismic stations detected the blast waves. Radioactive debris collected by U.S. reconnaissance flights confirmed the worst fears. The age of nuclear competition had begun. What followed was a race to build not just more bombs, but bigger ones, much bigger. On November 1, 1952, the United States detonated Ivy Mike, the first true hydrogen bomb. With a yield of 10.4 megatons, 500 times more powerful than Hiroshima, it vaporized an entire Pacific island. The fireball alone was 3 miles wide. The mushroom cloud reached the stratosphere. The Soviets answered with their own hydrogen bomb. Then came the ultimate demonstration of nuclear madness. On October 30, 1961, the Soviet Union detonated the Tsar Bomba, the most powerful weapon ever created. At 50 megatons, it was 3,000 times stronger than Hiroshima. The flash could be seen 600 miles away. The mushroom cloud rose 40 miles high, 7 times the height of Mount Everest. But it wasn't enough to build these weapons. They had to be deliverable anywhere on Earth within minutes. Intercontinental ballistic missiles turned the planet into a nuclear battlefield where no distance offered safety. Nuclear submarines prowled the depths, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire continents. By 1986, the world contained over 70,000 nuclear weapons. The United States and Soviet Union had enough destructive power to kill every person on Earth dozens of times over. Military strategists developed a doctrine with a fitting acronym: Mutually Assured Destruction, MAD. The logic was simple and terrifying. Neither side would dare launch a nuclear attack because the other would retaliate with total annihilation. Peace through the promise of apocalypse. For 45 years, this balance of terror held, but it came close to failing several times. During the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962, the world teetered on the brink for 13 days. Soviet missiles in Cuba, American warships enforcing a quarantine, nuclear submarines with authority to launch without orders from Moscow. On October 27th, a Soviet submarine commander nearly fired a nuclear torpedo at American ships. Only the objection of one officer, Vasily Arkhipov, prevented nuclear war. One man's decision may have saved human civilization. We survived the Cold War not through wisdom but through luck. Luck that technology worked when it should and failed when it shouldn't. Luck that the men with their fingers on the triggers chose restraint over revenge. Yet from this terrible knowledge came unexpected gifts. The same nuclear reactions that power weapons also power our cities. Today, nuclear energy provides 20% of America's electricity and 70% of France's. It's the cleanest, large-scale energy source we have. No greenhouse gases, no particulates, no contribution to climate change. Nuclear medicine saves millions of lives annually. Radioactive isotopes diagnose cancers, treat tumors, sterilize medical equipment. The same physics that created Fat Man now peers inside human hearts and brains, revealing disease and guiding healing. But the shadow remains. Chernobyl, in 1986, an explosion that scattered radioactive material across Europe, creating an exclusion zone that may remain uninhabitable for centuries. Fukushima, in 2011, a natural disaster that became a nuclear crisis, forcing 150,000 people from their homes. The Marshall Islands, where the United States conducted 67 nuclear tests, remains scarred by radiation. The Bikini Atoll Islanders, relocated for their safety, have never been able to return home. Today, 9 nations possess nuclear weapons. The global arsenal has shrunk from Cold War peaks, but it still contains over 12,000 warheads. The doomsday clock, created by atomic scientists to warn humanity of existential threats, now stands at 89 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. We learn to split the atom, and in doing so, learn to destroy ourselves. But we also learn something else, that human beings are capable of restraint even when armed with ultimate power. We have possessed weapons of mass extinction for 8 decades and have not used them in anger since 1945. The Hibakusha, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, have spent their lives bearing witness, ensuring the world remembers what atomic weapons actually do to human beings. Their message is simple: these weapons must never be used again. The question that haunts our species remains unchanged. What will we do with the terrible power we've unleashed? Are we protectors of life or its destroyers? The atom does not judge us. The choice between light and fire, between creation and annihilation, between wisdom and folly, that choice belongs entirely to us. The future will be written by what we decide to do with the power we hold.